Hi guys, Brett Manning, trustee of the New Aussie Constitution Trust. You want to find out about the New Aussie Constitution? Visit the website www.newaussieconstitution.com.au. So I've had a few questions about how did I determine what would go into the New Aussie Constitution draft. To start with, I looked at how we're actually operating at the moment and documented exactly how the government actually operates at this stage, which is not how the current constitution is written. So that formed the basis for the constitution as a document. The next thing I looked at was fixing those things that I believe are not working properly. And in this case, things like the role of the Senate. Another problem was how the voting for senators is structured. There's also some other minor repairs that have been done compared to the current constitution. For instance, the issue that we've had in recent times where freshly elected MPs have had to resign because of a question raised around their citizenship. So the new Aussie Constitution now allows for those sort of what I'll call administrative questions around citizenship to be resolved, if they can be resolved, to be resolved promptly, and the MP can continue in their seat without having to have another by-election. Then there's some items that have been added that are not covered in the current constitution, but I believe need to be. So these are things like electoral funding, describing local government, put greater emphasis on the independence of and the role of the Australian Electoral Commission, and have the Australian Electoral Commission reporting to the Governor-General, not to the government of the day. And of course the New Aussie Constitution specifies our rights and our responsibilities more clearly than the current constitution. We also look at introducing a few new concepts. Obviously one of those is Indigenous voice to Parliament. We've added aspirational values, Australian values. But generally speaking, the Constitution should steer away from matters that are better handled in the legislation of the day. And over the next 100 years that this, or so that this constitution might operate, we need to allow for the fact that Australia will, from time to time, lurch to the left, and then at other times it probably lurch to the right, and other times it'll be more in the middle. But we've got to have a constitution that can allow the government of the day to follow the advice of the citizens through their election, and so there needs to be this latitude or this channel between which the government of the day can operate. And in setting up that sort of broad channel which the successive governments can move back and forward between, there are some matters that those that are on the left will want to make sure that if the government in Australia is moving to the right, that there are certain values that are protected on the left. Likewise, if there are matters on the right and the country is moving to the left, the people on the right will want to make sure there are certain things that are not affected. And so those guide rails, if you like, are some of the basic rights that might apply to citizens that need to be protected as Australian governments move left and right over successive administrations, successive governments. And it's the job of the Constitution to protect those boundaries and protect the important issues that really shouldn't be altered by a government of the day without the endorsement of the Australian citizens at a referendum. So there are a few areas where the draft new Aussie Constitution strays into areas that you could argue are more for the legislation of the government of the day. Generally speaking, I've tried to avoid doing this, but if there's an area that the government won't, or successive governments won't act on because it's not in their interest, or potentially that the government can't act upon because potentially voter backlash, this may well be justification for including it in the Constitution. So people have also asked me, am I prepared to make changes? And the answer to that is absolutely. This is a process, and it's about refining this draft to make it as good as we possibly can. And I'm certainly no expert, and there will be areas of the Constitution that I've drafted that other people, other Australians, will know more about and will be able to better refine those ideas and concepts. And it's important that we draw that expertise out, and I'm more than happy to make changes where it will improve the draft of the new Aussie Constitution. Obviously, more than happy also to correct errors, and there will be errors in the document. If you can demonstrate that it won't function the way it's intended, then obviously we need to look at rewriting. Happy to look at adding things into the document where areas are identified that fit within those parameters I've discussed earlier in the video. I won't make changes just because a noisy few are yelling and screaming about some particular thing that they don't agree with. You really have to consider a document like this on an overall basis, because there are going to be things included in the document that you're not going to agree with. There are things in the document that I don't agree with, but I recognise that in the interests of having a balanced document that can deal with all the future types of Australian governments that might come along, we need to be a bit flexible about what's included. And I think in Australia we tend to look at the comments on the internet, and you might see negative comment after negative comment after negative comment. But I can also tell you, because I've already experienced it with the new Aussie Constitution draft, where people have come to me and have very positive comments to say about things that other people have publicly taken a very negative view to. So at this stage, as we're sort of developing forward the draft, I need to consider all the views, and I'm particularly interested obviously in the silent majority. So that's the centre of Australia that possibly wouldn't comment, possibly wouldn't lean into this sort of discussion, but does have an opinion, and if they're asked, they'll tell you what that is. So as I look at internet replies, as I look at emails that I receive, as I talk to people face to face, I get a fairly good understanding of where Australia is on each of these issues. And that will have a greater influence on whether we leave something in the Constitution or whether we alter it, we make some amendments. I'm also not keen to make changes just to be politically correct. This is a document that has to be able to handle a couple of 100 years, and views of people will change over that time. We can see that views have changed in the last 50 years significantly, and the document needs the flexibility to be able to deal with that, rather than what's important or what's the issue of today. So I am very keen to get feedback, to receive emails from people, to see comments posted online, even where they disagree with even changing the Constitution at all, whether that it's what's written in the new draft that people don't like, or if they're very supportive. It all helps to refine the document and bring it forward as a possible alternative Australian Constitution. Then, at the end of the day, it goes to referendum, and people decide if they do want to change the Constitution or if they don't. If they do want to change it, do they want to change it to the new Aussie Constitution draft or some other alternative? But at this stage, what I'm most interested in is getting comments and discussion. And even if you disagree strongly with what I've written, to me that's not a problem. I mean, I think in the internet these days, we think that if somebody disagrees with us, that you have to hate that person or that person hates you. That's not the case here. We need discussion, we need feedback, and we need to listen to other people's views. So if you see something posted online that in relation to the new Aussie Constitution that you don't like or you don't agree with, by all means, tell us what you're thinking. But there's no need to attack other people personally. And certainly when I'm looking at comments, and some of them can be written quite aggressively, what I'm looking for is the reasoning behind what that person is saying. And that's the important thing to take out of it. And it's also important to understand that there can be completely conflicting strong arguments for many of the aspects of this Constitution. Okay, so I can put together a very solid argument that says we should do something in a particular way, and I can put together a very solid argument of why we shouldn't do it. Okay, and that's the nature of some of these difficult decisions that apply when you're drafting something like the new Aussie Constitution. So I certainly strive to stay as open-minded as I can, and I would ask you to consider what people are saying and how you feel about it, and let us know. Thanks for your time.